I'm pretty sure you've heard the term best thing since sliced bread before, but how revolutionary was sliced bread for it to be given this amount of praise? Was it really that great? Before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe for more lazy historian videos. Now, when we say sliced bread, we mean bread that is pre-sliced before you buy it. Now, bread has been around for thousands of years before sliced bread came around. Humans started grinding grains around 100,000 years ago, but about 30,000 years ago is when the first evidence of actually grinding the grains came about. It turned them into a form of starch residue or paste. Some say flour came around this time, possibly, in even the earliest flatbreads, but there is no current evidence of flatbreads at this time. It wasn't until about 14,000 years ago in Jordan when actual bread was uncovered. It was in the form of breadcrumbs found in two large fireplaces. Starting around 9500 BC, some of the earliest crops grown in the ancient Levant, a region encompassing the eastern Mediterranean and Middle East, included wheat, barley, rye, lentils, chickpeas, and flax. It's not until around 1700 BC, however, in Greece, that we find a proliferation of small clay ovens that indicate not just widespread bread baking in individual households, but also commercial bakeries. The earliest yeast breads, sourdough, were found to be made in 1350 BC in Egypt, with the yeast being able to make the bread rise. The Romans then took bread to the next scale, being able to serve over 2,000 people per day with massive ovens and bakeries. Bread became a commodity. In medieval times and later, lighter breads were for the upper class, while darker breads were for common folk. Lighter breads being light and soft, darker breads being hard to chew. Well, what about the concept of slicing the breads in half? Sandwiches were allegedly invented in the 18th century by John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich. Yes, 4th Earl of Sandwich. I'm pretty sure maybe some people started slicing bread in half in general to make some sort of sandwich, but this is the guy who I guess gave it the name and made it an invention. But this was all before machine, so you can imagine the struggles of making bread with manual labor and finding the most efficient ways of eating it, especially when traveling. Enter the sliced bread. Otto Rohwedder was born in July 6, 1880. He began his career as a jeweler and entrepreneur, opening several jewelry stores. Later on, by 1912, he had sold all of his stores in order to fund his next project, building a piece of machinery that would automatically slice an entire loaf of bread at once. Not only did this include the machinery, but he also focused on the storage and shipment of the bread, keeping the loaves, now divided into slices, fresh and intact. Unfortunately, in 1917, a fire broke out in the factories of Rohwedder's first commissioning customers, destroying all the blueprints, the prototype, and the partnership, which led him to start all over again. In 1926, the first pop-up toaster was created. You would think its time of invention would be the other way around, coming after the sliced bread. Though, this made Rohwedder's sliced bread be in even more demand. In 1928, the first company to sign on to this new way of working was Frank Bench's Chillicothe Baking Company, creating the product clean-made sliced bread, which was first sold in Chillicothe, Missouri. There was concern on how long a pre-sliced loaf of bread would last before going stale, but by wrapping the loaves in wax paper to preserve the freshness, the concerns were gone with the ease of use. Rohwedder later did more research to determine the best size of each sliced bread, which would turn out to be just under half an inch. The factory-produced loaves back then could be made with a softer texture in mind before distribution. This gave customers a softer chew and an easier time when used for sandwiches that was hard to replicate with the harder, crustier homemade loaves. Bench's Chillicothe Baking Company increased its sales by 2,000% in just the first 2 weeks. Over the next year, Rowetter receives over 230 new orders for the machinery from across the nation. In 1933, during the Great Depression, Rowetter would go on to sell his successful patent to a larger company, but he ended up changing the way how bread was made, sold, and eaten. Wonder Bread is often thought to have been the first to sell sliced bread, but it wasn't. In 1930, Wonder, owned by Taggart Baking Company, began selling it. The brand was named after the sense of wonder experienced during the international balloon race, as well as balloons' lighter aesthetics, which was the best way to promote the signature soft texture. Wonder Bread soon became synonymous with a pillowy texture, a whiter than white appearance, and it being sliced. Sliced bread soon became a staple item in the US. By 1933, it was estimated that 80% of bread sold in America was sold pre-sliced. Not only was this trend affecting trade and eating habits, but it also seeped into American persona. Everything started to be compared to this invention that altered the way of life for Americans, creating phrases like the most progressive step in the baking industry since sliced bread, and the newest thing since sliced bread. And don't forget the biggest phrase, the greatest thing since sliced bread. Sliced bread definitely created a sense of ease when it came to snacks and preparing meals. Going from struggling to make and eat bread to having it ready-made and pre-sliced for use was pretty revolutionary, especially during the 20th century. So, let me know what you think about sliced bread. Do you think it was revolutionary? Has there been anything better than sliced bread ever since it was invented? Let me know down below in the comments. But that's all. Make sure to like and subscribe. Goodbye.